It's great to be home. We're done in Richmond, or at least for the time being. We're going back up there on March 23rd for a few days to do some more work on the budget and the Medicaid issue. But for the time being, I'm back in the district, and it's wonderful to be back here with friends and neighbors and be able to spend some time with my wife, Shelley. What I wanted to do was kind of give an overview of the session, kind of the highlights of the bills and the issues that made a good amount of news, maybe some that didn't, that may be important to y'all, and provided it kind of in a segmented basis. So I'll kind of touch through different segments on the issues as well as some of the hot topics that came up during session. The first bill I wanted to talk about was Senate Bill 236. It's Senator Carrico's bill and was nicknamed the Freedom to Pray bill in the press. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. I think a better nickname would be the graduation bill. I'm sure you heard about those situations that have occurred over the last year where a student would get up and give a commencement speech at graduation and may thank God during that commencement speech. And it would cause teachers and administrators to get a little uneasy, not knowing what the rule of law really is with regards to those types of comments in that situation. But it's very similar to what you hear at the Academy Awards or the Oscars. Well, this bill was put together to help provide that guidance. The only thing really it has to do with freedom to pray is it is in the section that talks about student-initiated prayer. That is already allowed in the Commonwealth of Virginia by the section of code 22.1-203.1, where it says that students in the public schools may voluntarily engage in student-initiated prayer. That's already there and that's already allowed. This just goes and puts a new section C in there to provide that additional guidance. The ACLU opposed this bill, saying that it's the government speaking through the students and that it's the government forcing invocations on the students who are captured in these student assemblies, and that now the schools are going to have to pick on who gives commencement speeches and who gives invocations out there and gets to talk about their religion, and it actually does none of that. It's Section C that really provides that guidance that was written into here, where it just says that at each school division, they'll adopt a policy that creates a limited public forum at the schools, and that public forum will be done in a manner that does not discriminate against a student's voluntary expression of a religious viewpoint, if any. And it's that if any part that I talked about in the education committee that's so important. You see, this isn't about a school asking the student to give a prayer or a school asking the student to talk about their religion. This just happens to govern if a student gets up to give a speech and in the course of the speech happens to thank God, that it gives guidance to the teachers and the administrators to say, this is okay, this is something that is allowed within the Code of Virginia. And it was probably most telling when this bill came to the floor of the House of Delegates. Delegate Morrissey got up and spoke against it, saying that this speech is already protected by the state code, and he gave the section of code that actually allows this type of speech. And I went and Googled that state code, and I brought it up, and not being an attorney, like most teachers and administrators, I had a hard time fully understanding that piece of code. All this does is provide simpler guidance to what, according to Delegate Morrissey, is already allowed. And, you know, at the behest of the ACLU, and their complete misrepresentation of this bill, the governor has said that he's going to veto this when it gets to his desk. But I think we all can agree that clarification and guidance is never a bad thing. And I think the majority and overwhelming majority of the people would agree. One of the contentious bills this year was actually House Bill 1237, the No Rest for Bambi bill, basically Sunday hunting. It's interesting how different parts of our state are and what matters to different parts of the Commonwealth. Sunday hunting wasn't a very contentious issue for us in Hampton Roads or the eastern part of the state, but it was amazingly contentious in the western part of the state. The way I view this down here is I personally don't hunt, but I have a lot of friends that do. I know a lot of fathers' sons that get away and they go hunt in the western part of the state when they have time and have that bonding opportunity. And in Hampton Roads, you can't just drive a half an hour to go hunting with your father. It really becomes a long drive out to another part of the state. So having 7 days to do it, basically 2 days over the weekend, was important to them. And I got a fair amount of response and interest from people in our area asking to have it 7 days. And those that were in the western part of the state, they were mixed all over the place. And what this bill essentially does is it just says that someone that owns property can themselves hunt on Sundays on property they own, or they can allow others with their permission to hunt on Sundays. For many, it just was a property rights issue that those that own property could do with as they wanted to. If you could hunt on your own land 6 days a week, well, now you can hunt on your own land 7 days a week. So it didn't deal with any public property. It also didn't deal with hunting with dogs. Those dogs still have to work only 6 days a week. But now in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you can go and ask for permission to hunt on someone's private property and have that available to you 7 days a week. The bill that got a lot of attention this year was House Bill 975. It was the repeal of the hybrid tax, or the way I looked at it was the repeal of the transportation plan. And actually, it's not going to be that bad, but it started some concerns, and I'll explain that in a minute. The hybrid tax was part of the overall transportation package that was passed in the prior General Assembly session. It was one of the funding mechanisms. It started out as a $100 annual tax on a hybrid vehicle. Bob McDonnell lowered it to $64, and that's where it passed as part of that package at. It was going to generate $6.9 million a year, which would be used to continue to build roads around the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's part of that package that we needed to continue to build the roads to support the Port of Virginia so they could increase their business and put the roads in place that our military was talking about, that was a readiness issue for them, and what economic development partnerships all around the Commonwealth were telling us was needed so that they could have those projects completed that were preventing them from growing their economies. When I ran for office for the General Assembly, I was asked a number of times would I repeal the transportation plan, and I said there's no way I would go down that road. I wouldn't do anything to start unwinding that transportation plan. It was a package that took 10 years to get created and passed through the General Assembly. It's something that we've needed for a very long time. And when it came in front of us, there's two reasons why I voted against it. It actually passed the House 89-9. Not that many no votes, but I was one of them. And the first reason was, I'm a business person, and in business there's two rules. The first rule is you always make a decision. The worst thing you could do is sit there and not make a decision, which is essentially what we did for 10 years, debating and deliberating what should we do, and is now the right time, and we finally made a decision. And that was the first rule. You need to make a decision. But the second rule is once you make that decision, you look forward, you focus forward. You don't keep second guessing yourself on a past decision, which is what I felt was happening this year. We were going back and revisiting this transportation plan. The second reason I voted against it was I felt it was important not to set a precedent, to start unfunding parts of this transportation plan and start repealing some of this funding. You see, there's future funding mechanisms that haven't started yet. They're going to start in a couple years in the future. And I didn't think we needed to start down the road of unraveling the only transportation plan that we've been able to put in place after 10 years of effort and start to pull back some of that funding. For me, sometimes you can do more harm than good by revisiting the past. And this was one of those times for me, and that's why I voted the way I did. General Assembly, there's not too many bills that just about everyone can relate to. But Senate Bill 228 was one of them. For me, it was the Paws experience. I remember being a child and my sister and I getting our first dog. We named the dog Paws, and I remember the first day I came through the door, there was no doubt it was going to be with us forever. And if anything would have happened to that dog and if it would become ill, my parents knew there was going to be no option but to take it to the vet and make it well so it could come back home and rejoin our family. But all too often, people go to the pet store and they buy a dog, they bring it home, only to find out days later that the dog is sick. And unless they're willing to incur significant veterinary charges on top of the purchase price of the animal to begin with, they only have two options. One is to return the animal to the pet store and get a full refund. The other option is to return the dog to the pet store and exchange it for another dog of equal value. But when you have young kids, neither one of those is an option. After that dog's been brought into the house and they've played with it, and after that first night it's spent in their bed, you know there's no way that you're going to be able to give that dog up. This bill creates a third option. It says that if a pet store sells a dog that's ill to someone, that person has the ability to take it to the veterinary clinic and have it treated, and can then take those receipts to the pet store and be reimbursed for that treatment up to the full cost of the dog, allowing you to be able to take the dog back home to be with your children and not have to have that double cost of buying the dog and then having it treated. I think it's a great bill. It's one I think just about everyone can relate to, and it's one that I think will hopefully make a lot of kids happy in the future. Job I saw this year in the General Assembly dealt with House Bill 791. That bill would have allowed homeowner associations to unilaterally change their contract with a homeowner. You know, when you buy a house, part of that package you get is a contract between you as the new homeowner and the homeowner association, and it lays out all the stuff that you have to do. You won't paint your house pink, and you'll take your garbage cans inside by a certain day after the garbage is collected, and all those little things. And there may be a clause in the newer homeowner association contracts that allow them to fine you $10 a day for not adhering to those policies. Well, there are some older homeowner associations around the Commonwealth that do not have that clause in them that allow for those associations to fine homeowners for not adhering to contracts. What this bill would have done was basically allowed the association to unilaterally, without the homeowner's permission, just put that into their contract and say, now we have the ability to fine you $10 a day, even though when you bought your house, it wasn't in that agreement with you to begin with. There was so much spin and misinformation on this. I was getting emails all over the place from friends of mine that were forwarding me information that this is protection for the homeowner. Could have talked about all these other protections that were being put in place that the homeowner association had to do before it could take legal action. Well, truth be told, the only reason those protections were necessary was because the legal action that the association was looking to be given that it didn't already have the permission to do in the first place. This bill actually, when it went to committee, it came to the floor. It passed the first time. When it came back in the Senate version, it actually failed and went to conference. And I thought this thing was going to be completely dead. There were a number of provisions that were just, in my opinion, complete abuse. The only thing that came out of that conference committee was the ability for a homeowners association to go to general district court with a homeowner as opposed to circuit court with a homeowner, which to me made complete sense. When you go to general district court, it's a lot more informal. When a homeowner walks into circuit court, it's more formal. You probably won't look like you have an attorney there. It's a little bit more intimidating. So that part made sense, and that's all that came out of this. Everything that allowed an abuse of an existing contract was stricken from this language. So if you were following House Bill 791 and you didn't like it and you were concerned that it passed, go back and look at the new version. You'll find that probably everything you did not like in the initial version is gone. And all that made it out was the ability for the homeowner and the association to actually go to general district court, which I think is better for both parties. Hampton Roads, I'm sure you've seen I Love Jet Noise on a bumper sticker or in a sign in a window. Personally, I grew up here and wouldn't know what it was like to live anywhere else where I didn't hear the sounds of freedom flying overhead. And just like in Virginia Beach and the Commonwealth of Virginia, we take care of those that have taken care of us when they come back from deployment. And this year, we did a number of things to do just that. First, there was some additional funds provided to the Virginia Values Veterans Program, the V3 program that supports the hiring and retention of veterans when they come back from deployment. There was additional funding put in for the Virginia Wounded Warrior Program, a program started in 2008 in response to the growing need to improve and expand services to veterans that were touched by stress-related injury or traumatic brain injury. There was a bill put in by Delegate Russ that passed that would permit the electronic return of absentee ballots by overseas uniformed military personnel that were not able to send in the traditional paper absentee ballot. There was a bill put in by Delegate Cox that passed that created an advanced manufacturing advisory council to assist veterans in qualifying for jobs in advanced manufacturing when they came back to the private sector. Delegate Anderson put in a bill that passed that increased the grace period for military personnel on active duty from 5 to 14 days to get their vehicles registered. And Delegate Wilt put one in that allowed surviving spouses of military members killed in action or missing in action to be eligible for in-state tuition. Every year there's a number of bills that we try to put through the General Assembly to help that transition back to the private sector for our military veterans and their family. And I think this year we did a number of really great things to continue that trend. Virginia has led the way in education for decades, and this year's no different. This year, Virginia education went high-tech. You may have already seen the video I did on House Bill 930, the SOL reform bill, where I talk about computer adaptive testing and how we're using technology now to better understand how well each individual student understands the content of that subject matter in that particular class, and also how we're reducing the number of SOL tests. If you haven't we'll have that link below for you. But another bill that was introduced this year and passed was House Bill 1115, which established the Virtual Virginia program, basically an electronic online classroom. It's basically a clearinghouse for online learning for our students. It's going to allow a lot of instructional material to be put online that the students can look and learn and supplement their classes, and teachers can also use to help supplement their teachings of certain subject matter. It's a great way to use technology, almost a way to use crowdsourcing with regards to the education of our students. Another bill that came through was House Joint Resolution 1, and this set up the teacher career ladder. Basically, it reinforced individualized student growth through high-performance individualized teaching. Essentially, we want to reward teachers on how well that they're doing in the classroom, but the biggest issue has always been, how do you monitor that and how do you measure that? And you can't just say, let's look at the SOL test scores, because in some cases, maybe they're in a school that is known to have high test scores, and in other cases, maybe the school is one that needs a lot of attention, and the teachers really have more of a challenge inside that classroom getting those test scores elevated. What this does is it talks about baselining at the beginning of the year where the students are, and then helping reward teachers based upon where that baseline was and where the students finished at the end of the year. I think this is a great out-of-the-box program to look at how we recognize and reward our teachers based on how they're able to elevate a student over the course of the year. And then the last bill that I think garnered a lot of attention with regards to education this year was House Bill 1229. This was a bill dealing with the A through F grading system. It's a bill, if you remember in the past, there was a bill that went through that was going to grade all of our schools A through F. There was a lot of concern about moving forward with that for a number of reasons. And this bill delayed it. Initially, it was going to delay it 1 year. It came out of conference committee because the Senate put a delay in for 3 years. The House had a delay for 1 year. They compromised, and it'll be now delayed 2 years before we look at implementing the A through F grading system of our schools. So those are a few bills that I think were the biggest highlights of our education agenda this year up at the House of Delegates. And there's other ones out there too if you want to look at legislative services. But take a look at these. I think you'll be really happy with where we went this year. Virginia continued to show it's still open for business. There were a number of good bills submitted this year that helped continue to have Virginia cement itself as one of the best states in the nation to start and grow businesses. One of them that I thought got a lot of attention and a great bill was Delegate O'Quinn's bill. It was House Bill 375, and essentially it dealt with patent trolls. There are a number of people or entities out there that they look for people using certain technology or certain processes, and then they automatically just send them a letter asserting that they're engaging in patent violations and patent infringement. And at that point, that small business has one of two options. They can hire an attorney to go fight it and spend thousands and thousands of dollars, or they can just pay whatever licensing fee that entity requests, and then they can continue to move forward. And in many cases, that licensing fee is significantly less expensive than if they were to just hire an attorney to go and try to handle that case for them and defend itself. It's a situation that has occurred nationwide, and Virginia has been one of the states to lead the way in stepping in and preventing that from happening to our small businesses and having them being taken advantage of. Two other bills that you've heard me talk about, I'm kind of biased, they're my bills, but House Bill 617 is the bill, is the companion bill to Sal Iaquinto's bill that allows localities to exempt businesses from the business property tax for their first two years of operation. And then House Bill 589 is my other bill that prevents localities from charging business property taxes on computer and electronic equipment that people may use as they're trying to get their business off the ground, working out of their house, using equipment that they already owned, computers that are family computers or cell phones that the family uses. In the status quo before this bill was passed, once you start using those items for business purposes, they automatically are subject to business property tax. Now, as long as they're still primarily used for your family or for personal use, they're not subject to that business property tax. So hopefully that allows our new startup opportunities to continue to move forward, give them a better chance of success and a better chance to grow and employ more Virginians around the Commonwealth. And lastly, I joined the Business Development Caucus. A number of pro-business delegates are part of that caucus, both Democrat and Republican. We're going to be making our way around the state to meet with various business groups, and we're actually going to be bringing them here to Hampton Roads soon. I'm going to sponsor an opportunity for our business owners to get together with them and talk about concerns and issues that they have that they'd like to see rectified in the next upcoming General Assembly session to help them continue to grow and thrive here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So there's the overview on what we did for business, and I think you'll see a lot of good things come out of all this. Reform has been necessary in the Commonwealth for quite some time. And with the tragedy that occurred with one of our senators right before the start of session, it became all that more apparent. This year, I think we did some great first steps with regards to providing new resources and new funding towards those in need. It started with Delegate Villanueva's bill, House Bill 478, which took the emergency custody order period from the existing 4 hours to 8 hours. Then there was another bill put in, House Bill 1232, which required the Department of Behavioral Health to create and maintain a real-time online database to display information about available beds in public and private inpatient psychiatric facilities in the Commonwealth, so we know what the available inventory is for those with health needs. And then you had House Bill 293, which Delegate Bell put in, that basically said if a private facility or temporary detention cannot be identified by the end of that 8-hour period, the person should be taken to a state facility that has to accept that patient for treatment. And then another big one that was put in by Senator Deeds created a 4-year Behavioral Health Services Commission study to study Virginia's publicly funded behavioral health services to make sure we're prepared for the 21st century. There's a lot more to do, but it was great to see that this year we took a lot of first steps that we can build upon in the future to helping those with mental health needs across the country. By no means was that an exhaustive list of all the bills that were passed this year by the General Assembly or even all the subject matter discussed. Actually, there's over 1,600 more bills that were passed by the House and the Senate that are awaiting the governor's signature. But what I wanted to do was provide you with some insight into some of the bills that passed that garnered a lot of media attention over the course of this General Assembly session, and also give you some insight into some other bills that passed that could affect you and your family as you move forward. You'll notice Medicaid expansion wasn't discussed on this video. That's a big and complex issue in and of itself, and that'll be a separate video that I'll put together. As always, my office and I are here for you, and if there's any questions you have on any topics discussed in this video or maybe some bills that we didn't discuss here, please reach out to us. We're happy to help.